ever been in a meeting, maybe negotiating a deal or just, scrolling through the news and had that unsettling feeling that the person who seems the most relaxed, the most quiet, or maybe even the most genuinely clueless is actually the one holding all the cards?
It's such a strange paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially today in the information age.
Right.
We are constantly told that data is power, that the person with the most facts wins the argument, wins the deal. The traditional assumption is that information is always a good thing, that it carries a non-negative value.
That knowing more is always better.
Always better. But what our sources for this deep dive prove, both historically and in modern corporate strategy, is that sometimes the most powerful, most strategic move you can possibly make is to deliberately and intentionally not know something, or to expertly hide what you do know.
Okay, let's unpack this because that is the entire mission of today's deep dive. We are analyzing the sophisticated architecture behind intentional ignorance and concealed intentions. Welcome to Unspoken Rules. We've synthesized everything from classical Machiavellian texts to deep psychological studies on knowledge hoarding and even some high-level strategic avoidance techniques. This is all about discovering those hidden rules of influence, where power isn't about shining brightly. It's about blending in, playing the fool, and expertly managing your own state of, awareness.
And our focus today is really on a duality. On one side, you have the active concealment of knowledge you already possess. Researchers have a term for this. They call it knowledge hiding. It's a deliberate, interpersonal deception.
Okay, so that's hiding what you know.
Right. And on the other side, we have the deliberate decision to avoid gaining or using information in the first place. That's what we're calling strategic ignorance.
And to really understand the foundation of this dual strategy, we have to, travel back 5 centuries. Because the classical blueprint for this whole idea, for combining cunning and force, for mixing calculated perception with harsh reality, it comes straight from the mind of Niccolo Machiavelli. It absolutely does. I mean, Machiavelli's framework, specifically his famous metaphor, the fox and the lion, it serves as the classical bedrock for understanding how effective power operates outside the bounds of, let's say, conventional morality.
Yeah.
He recognized that real, lasting success demands both raw strength and manipulative cunning. And throughout this deep dive, you'll see how this classical strategy translates directly into modern, high-impact organizational behavior, especially when we connect these deceptive tactics to the psychological research on the dark triad of personality later on. It's a centuries-old playbook that's still very much in use today.
Let's start at the source then, the prince. It's so often misinterpreted as just a manual for pure ruthlessness, but when you really dig in, it's more a manual for survival through extreme adaptability. Machiavelli argued that a ruler must learn how to act like a beast.
Right.
He has to adopt the combined natures of the fox and the lion. It sounds like really brutal imagery, but it's actually about situational ethics and, survival. It's the ultimate lesson in flexibility. And you have to understand Machiavelli's starting point, which frames all his controversial advice. He fundamentally believed that human beings are inherently, and I'm quoting here, wretched and deceitful.
A pretty bleak outlook.
Very bleak outlook.
Yeah.
And because of this, a successful leader can't just rely on the human path of law, honor, and integrity. To survive in a dangerous world, they have to master the bestial path. And that means mastering the two beasts.
Okay, so let's break down the role of the lion. This one feels like the easier one to grasp.
It is, yeah. The lion represents raw power, overt strength, and a fearsome, almost unassailable reputation. Its main goal is to establish and maintain control by creating a powerful deterrent.
It's there to terrify the wolves.
To terrify the wolves, exactly. And these wolves are the overt predators. Your competitors, internal rebels, external enemies who want to challenge you through direct aggression. The lion's strength, its roar, creates a reputation that just makes direct conflict seem way too costly.
And that's the face of confident, decisive leadership we so often celebrate, right? In public life, in the boardroom. The leader who acts with this ferocious, immediate resolve. But Machiavelli warns, and this is critical, that relying only on the lion is foolish. Why is pure strength a fatal flaw?
Because the lion is fundamentally defenseless against traps. A strategist who relies purely on that lion-like strength is predictable. Their reliance on direct confrontation makes them so easy to lure into subtle, ethical, legal, or social snares that just completely neutralize their brute power without ever having to engage them in a direct fight.
Can you give us a modern example of that?
Sure. Think about a powerful company, a market leader, that's so focused on just crushing its competitors with scale, that's the lion, that it completely ignores the subtle legal traps being laid by smaller rivals. Things like intellectual property infringement, or complex regulatory hurdles, or even, ethical traps set up to damage their public reputation.
I see. So the lion is looking for a fight, but the trap isn't a fight.
It's a snare. And those who rely simply on the lion's size and direct force, Machiavelli stated, do not understand matters. Strength alone is just not enough, because the world of power is full of subtle deceptions and pitfalls.
Which means you need the fox, the antidote to the trap.
The fox. It's defined by cunning, by shrewd strategy and diplomacy. Its core operational goal isn't to fight the wolves or, advertise its strength. Its job is to recognize and sidestep the traps.
And these traps are metaphorical?
They're intellectual, social, or legal snares. They're designed to constrain you, to commit you to a disadvantageous path. The fox uses cunning and a kind of sophisticated perception to navigate and just silently sidestep these pitfalls.
But just as the lion has its flaw, the fox is, quote, defenseless against wolves or, direct overwhelming threats. Cunning alone won't save you if you can't back it up with force. So the synthesis, then, is the mandate.
Exactly. Real success requires balancing both cunning and strength, fraud and force combined. The successful leader or the prudent ruler needs what we now call situational ethics.
Meaning they have to be willing and able to change their behavior dramatically as circumstances dictate.
Dramatically. It means you must be bold when boldness is necessary, but cautious when caution is prudent. Benevolent to maintain popular support, or harsh when you need to maintain order. They have to do whatever is required to stay in power and protect their state or their organization, even if it means acting outside of conventional morality.
And this leads us to the most controversial aspect of the fox's cunning, the necessity of deception or dissimulation. This is where the historical texts take a really sharp turn from traditional virtue.
It's the heart of the matter, really. Machiavelli provided perhaps his most unsettling piece of advice here. He reasoned that a prudent ruler cannot and should not keep their word when it places them at a severe disadvantage, or when the reasons for the promises they made in the first place no longer exist.
He is fundamentally challenging the whole idea that honor must always supersede self-preservation.
He is.
But doesn't that inherently break down all trust in the long run? I mean, how does Machiavelli rationalize that short-term gain against lasting political stability?
Well, he rationalizes it based on his very cynical view of human nature. He argues that since the majority of people are inherently wretched and deceitful, and they will break their faith with you at the first opportunity for profit, you are not bound to keep faith with them.
It's a defensive measure.
It's a necessary defensive and preemptive measure. He sees it that way. Furthermore, he believed that the ruler, who operates for the collective security of the state, has a higher moral imperative than the average citizen who's just driven by petty self-interest.
So if you're going to be a successful deceiver, you have to be, in his words, a great feigner and dissembler.
Absolutely. And this works because, as Machiavelli observed, people are often too simple. They're too driven by present necessities to see through a really well-crafted deception. They want to believe the comfortable narrative. They just focus on the surface, the appearance.
And this is where that gap between public perception and true reality becomes a powerful strategic tool. I mean, if you look at the successful deceivers in history, or even in modern corporate politics, they have mastered this gap.
And we can pull two key lessons from this that will set up our later sections on hiding information. The most crucial insight, I think, regarding perception is this. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are.
Wow.
That one line establishes that the careful facade, the strategic reputation, is the primary battleground for the fox. What you project matters exponentially more than what you genuinely believe or intend.
So the act of managing perception isn't an optional skill, it's a mandatory aspect of leadership. And there's a certain intellectual pride in mastering this game, isn't there?
Oh, for sure. That's encapsulated in that other line. It is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver. It's a high-stakes intellectual game of wits. And the goal is always to remain the master of the mask, making sure your opponents are always reacting to your shadow and never your substance.
We've established intentional deception, the fox hiding what it knows. Now we need to make this crucial transition to intentional blindness, the powerful person choosing to ignore information entirely. So the question is, when does deliberately knowing less actually make you more effective, not less?
And now we're diving into strategic ignorance.
Yeah.
The formal definition is the conscious behavior of avoiding, gaining, or using information to achieve a certain benefit. And we have to emphasize again, this is intentional. It's a deliberate, rational act. It's not passive neglect.
It's an active decision.
It's an active decision. And that's why this concept, it moves beyond standard economic models, which almost universally assume that getting more information is always an asset, that it has a non-negative value. Strategic ignorance acknowledges that sometimes information can actually carry a negative cost.
Okay, I can see how information could be costly if it requires huge resources to process or something, but how else does it carry a negative value?
Information can constrain your freedom of action. It can force you onto a path you would much rather avoid. If I know some devastating truth, I might be morally, legally, or organizationally obligated to act on it. But if I maintain ignorance, I retain strategic flexibility. And that realization, it drives several key organizational and managerial reasons for adopting, willful blindness.
Let's talk about those drivers. The first one sounds like it's all about protecting the current system.
Yes, the first is simply avoiding complications and complexity. Managers will actively avoid information that could challenge existing routines or force them into really disruptive changes or just increase their workload exponentially.
So if the information suggests a necessary but really painful restructuring, it's just safer for the manager's career to ignore it and preserve the status quo.
Exactly. The information is blocked because acting on it is perceived as way more costly than just ignoring it. You're protecting the organization's inertia because transformation is expensive, it's painful, and it's often really, really risky.
Okay, that makes sense. The second driver is more personal, right?
Intensely personal.
Mm-hmm.
It's reducing environmental pressure and stress. Our modern world is defined by information overload, high data volume, the speed of constant change. Conscious ignorance acts as a defense mechanism against the cognitive stress and anxiety caused by all this complexity.
It's a filter.
It's a ruthless filter. Not knowing allows a manager to cut down their cognitive load to protect their limited bandwidth for the 2 or 3 things they genuinely need to focus on. They just don't have the mental energy to care about every single crisis.
That makes perfect sense. Ruthlessly filtering protects your most valuable strategic resource, your attention. But the most insidious and frankly strategic driver of willful blindness has to be denying liability. Plausible deniability.
This is where strategic ignorance really transforms into an institutional defense mechanism. Intentional insulation from unsettling, problematic, or legally compromising information. It allows individuals or even entire institutions to maintain this facade of control while simultaneously denying accountability when things go wrong.
And how is this institutionalized? It sounds like more than just one person deciding to turn a blind eye.
Oh, it requires organizational design. Plausible deniability is often enabled by creating buffer zones, by compartmentalizing information. Imagine a really complex financial institution or a high-level government agency. The people at the very top, they structure the flow of information so that the sensitive or legally problematic facts stop several layers below them.
They only get the sanitized version.
They receive only sanitized, summarized reports that focus on outcomes, not methods. It's a knowledge alibi. If the CEO never saw the raw data that signaled a major problem, they can claim they never possessed the inconvenient facts.
Right.
And the difficulty of proving whether that ignorance is feigned or genuine, that is what makes it so strategically useful. If unsettling knowledge is thwarted from ever reaching the top of the chain in the first place, it's extremely difficult to hold individuals legally liable for knowledge they can credibly claim they never possessed.
And this behavior also protects the individual psychologically, right? The final driver in the sources is protecting self-esteem.
Yes. This is about avoiding information that might fundamentally challenge your values, your prior beliefs, or force you to give up long-held ideas. If a manager built their entire career on a certain business model, And new market data comes in suggesting that model is fatally flawed.
They're not going to want to hear that.
They're going to ignore it because accepting it is psychologically incompatible with their self-identity and their whole narrative of competence. Ignoring the unwelcome data actually increases their feeling of certainty and competence, at least in the short term.
Okay, so let's pivot from organizational defense to tactical offense. Where is strategic ignorance applied to actually maximize outcomes, especially in high-stakes situations like a negotiation?
Negotiation's a perfect example where that old assumption that more information is better just completely falls apart. Knowledge can severely constrain your action set.
Okay, give us a specific example. How does knowing too much
One key reason is avoiding signaling. Let's say you're trying to acquire a rare artifact. You've had an extensive appraisal done, and you know its absolute maximum fair market valuation is, say, $1 million.
Okay.
When you start negotiating with a seller, that internal knowledge, that number in your head, risks involuntarily signaling your preferences or your eagerness.
Yeah.
You might subconsciously, through your body language, offer a starting bid that's way too high. Or you might over-optimize your counteroffers based on your private knowledge, and that just signals desperation.
I see. But if I maintain strategic ignorance, like, say, I only allow myself to know the minimum market price, but not the absolute maximum value I'm willing to pay, my starting bid is likely to be lower and more detached.
Exactly. The lack of knowledge actually forces self-discipline, and it expands your choice set at that crucial opening moment. And there's another psychological benefit in negotiation, which is counteracting self-serving bias.
Explain that one.
Well, research shows that when you give participants full information about a legal case, and then you arbitrarily assign them the role of plaintiff or defendant, they will interpret the exact same facts to favor their assigned role.
They rationalize the facts to fit their self-interests.
100%. This self-serving bias, it can lead to a complete breakdown in what could be a mutually valuable negotiation, because both sides become so entrenched in their truth. So remaining deliberately ignorant of certain details that might trigger that bias, maybe some old historical grudges between the companies or subjective valuations, it can help negotiators remain objective. It prevents those emotional biases from taking hold and causing the whole process to fail.
That is a brilliant counterintuitive point. You are literally making yourself less capable in one specific area to achieve a superior, more objective outcome overall. And this connects perfectly to the idea of high-impact leadership that we mentioned at the top.
Absolutely. Think of visionary leaders like Jeff Bezos at Amazon or Steve Jobs at Apple. They were masters of filtering. They practiced strategic ignorance by actively filtering out low-value, short-term inputs. Bezos famously ignored Wall Street's short-term quarterly pressures and profit expectations for years.
Right.
He did that to focus relentlessly on customer obsession and long-term scalability.
Had he listened to every external noise, the investment critics, the quarterly reports, the day-to-day stock fluctuations, Amazon's mission to become the everything store might have been diluted or just abandoned altogether. He was strategically ignoring the noise.
Precisely. And Jobs, similarly, was a master of simplification through rejection. He rejected endless product ideas, internal political squabbles, complex internal processes, all to focus only on what aligned with Apple's core vision of simple, elegant products.
So this radical selective ignorance protected their cognitive bandwidth.
It did. It ensured they could focus on core mission-centric priorities, and it allowed them to make truly informed decisions in the limited areas where they did have expertise.
But where's the risk here? I mean, surely there's a very fine line between genius-level filtering and just fatal tunnel vision.
There is always a risk, of course. The risk of strategic ignorance is that the information you choose to ignore may be the one critical piece of data that signals an existential threat, or a completely new technology that requires immediate adaptation. But the high-impact leader, they accept that risk.
Why?
Because the alternative, drowning in low-value data, guarantees mediocrity. They make the calculation that protecting their focus is worth the risk of missing a subtle threat. The best leaders aren't drowning in information. They're filtering ruthlessly to preserve their cognitive energy for the biggest strategic moves.
Okay, so we've covered the strategy of not knowing, which is strategic ignorance. Now let's turn to the strategy of not sharing what you do know. In the corporate world, this is defined as knowledge hiding, or KH. And this isn't just someone forgetting to email you a file, this is intentional.
That's the key distinction. Knowledge hiding is strictly defined as an intentional attempt by an individual to withhold or conceal knowledge that has been requested by another person. It reflects a very negative, non-cooperative perspective on contribution. It's a deliberate act of sabotage, or, depending on the context, self-preservation.
And the research shows that KH isn't just one single behavior. It actually manifests in 3 distinct tactical forms, and each one involves a different degree of deception.
That's right. These are the 3 primary mechanisms of deception that organizational research has identified.
Okay, first up, the one that leverages the principles we just talked about. Strategic ignorance, but in a deceptive way. Playing dumb.
Playing dumb is deception through feigned ignorance. The employee pretends to be completely unaware of the requested information, even though they know it perfectly well. They'll act indifferent or surprised by the request, outright denying they have that specific piece of knowledge.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. A tenured technician who knows exactly why a specific system is failing, but when a junior colleague asks them, they just shrug and say, "Oh, I haven't looked at that system in years. I wouldn't know."
So they leverage the fact that it's really difficult to prove they're lying. You can only prove that they seem incompetent or out of the loop. The second form, evasive hiding, sounds more aggressive, more actively deceptive.
It is. Evasive hiding involves proactive, direct deception. This includes providing false or purposefully partial information. Or, and this is a common one, attempting to avoid providing the knowledge by delaying it indefinitely with a promise to share it later this week.
A promise that's never going to be kept.
A promise made with no real intention of honoring it. This type involves clear deception, outright lying, and non-cooperation designed to actively mislead the person asking, sending them down a dead-end path. If playing dumb is passive denial, evasive hiding is active misdirection.
And the third type is the one that seems to sit on the borderline of intentional malice, rationalized hiding. This one seems designed to protect the self-image of the person doing the hiding.
In rationalized hiding, the knowledge holder presents a logical, understandable explanation for why they can't share. But they attribute the refusal to an external factor or a third party. They might say something like, "The boss wouldn't let anyone share this knowledge," or "It's proprietary information, even though I know it."
So it's not a direct lie about what they know.
Right, because the person attempts to offer a comprehensible, defensible reason instead of pure deception. This isn't considered a voluntary deception attempt in the same way as the other 2, more malevolent types.
That distinction is incredibly important for the psychology section later, but let's connect these hiding types back to that broader framework of tactical deception, the law of the fox. This is the realm of the gray man and playing the fool.
Absolutely. The foundational strategy here is the concealment of intentions. If people have no clue what your true purposes are, they cannot prepare a defense. They can't anticipate your next move. This requires smokescreens, false sincerity, and decoyed objects of desire.
I find the idea that the best way to hide your true intentions is often not by shutting down and looking all secretive, but by talking endlessly about false goals.
Precisely. The goal is misdirection. The best deceptions require a smokescreen to distract everyone's attention from the real purpose. The bland, unreadable exterior, the comfortable and familiar presence, that is the perfect smokescreen. It's so difficult for people to imagine that the bland, harmless, maybe slightly incompetent person they are dealing with is simultaneously setting up a highly sophisticated long-term trap.
And the ultimate refinement of playing dumb, which connects directly to that organizational KH type, is the tactical maneuver of playing the sucker to catch a sucker.
This tactic explicitly leverages the oldest psychological flaw there is, human vanity. The goal is to make your victims feel smarter than you, so they drop their guard and never suspect you might have ulterior motives.
Yeah, because no one likes feeling stupider than the next person.
Right. So you feign ignorance. You ask deliberately simple, naive questions. You use strategic humility to lower the opponent's defenses. By appearing simple or out of the loop, you're flattering the opponent into believing they have the upper hand.
It's manipulative flattery.
Absolutely. The opponent, convinced of their own brilliance and superiority, becomes complacent. They become less defensive, and they're far more likely to share vital information or reveal their own true intentions or just make a simple tactical error. The objective is clear. Gather information while remaining completely underestimated. You are a genius concealed by the appearance of commonness.
This intentional invisibility is so central to the modern concept of the gray man theory. Tell us how this principle of total concealment works in, say, a professional or strategic context.
The gray man theory is the ultimate modern concealment strategy. It moves beyond just simple deception to total operational invisibility. The central principle is to blend in so well that you are forgettable.
Not hiding in the shadows, but hiding in plain sight.
Hiding in plain sight. Moving through any environment without drawing unnecessary attention, making yourself completely unremarkable in any setting. This low visibility approach is all about self-preservation.
Why is being forgettable such a huge advantage?
Because it ensures you avoid becoming a target. If you're forgettable, you don't become a target for opportunists, competitors, or anyone seeking to exploit resources or skills. This is vital during high-stakes situations or crises where people are actively looking for signs of competence or resources to target. The gray man is intentionally non-threatening, non-wealthy, and non-opinionated.
So what are the tactical steps involved? It's got to be more than just wearing a beige coat.
It requires meticulous control over your appearance and your behavioral patterns. On appearance, you choose neutral clothing. You avoid bright colors, overt logos, anything that signals wealth, extreme status, or strong political, religious, or social opinions. You have to dress for the environment, not against it.
And what about behavior? That seems a lot harder to control than your clothing.
Behavior is key. You have to maintain calm, ordinary body language, avoid nervous habits, fidgeting, rapid movements that signal anxiety or hyper-awareness. And crucially, the gray man must master soft observation.
Soft observation.
Instead of scanning a room aggressively, which just screams prepared or threat, you use your peripheral vision and discrete situational awareness. You avoid openly staring or glaring because that could invite scrutiny or conflict. Being overtly watchful can make you look like a target or a threat yourself.
That makes a lot of sense.
And finally, managing your digital footprint is now critical to the gray man strategy. If you're seeking any kind of professional anonymity, you have to control what information is accessible online. Avoiding overly opinionated or loud behavior in public spaces, both physical and digital, ensures that when someone briefly notices you, there's just nothing memorable for them to attach to your image. The goal is to appear functional, ordinary, and ultimately invisible.
We've established the how, the tactics of ignorance and concealment. Now let's explore the who and the why at the individual level. We're talking about the personality traits that strongly predict these knowledge-hiding behaviors. The infamous dark triad.
The dark triad. It's a constellation of three socially undesirable personality traits: Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy. Organizational research has demonstrated a very significant and specific positive association between these traits and specific knowledge-hiding behaviors.
And this is crucial, right? Because it helps us predict not just if someone will hide knowledge, but how they will choose to hide it.
Exactly. The how is the key.
So let's look at the malevolent core first.
Right.
Which of these dark traits are the primary drivers of active deception?
We can pretty much group Machiavellianism and psychopathy together as the primary drivers of the most malevolent forms of deception. Research shows these traits are positively associated with the most deceptive and aggressive forms of knowledge hiding: evasive hiding and playing dumb.
Okay, why those two specifically? And how do the traits differ in their, execution?
Well, both traits share a lack of empathy, a willingness to exploit others, and manipulative thinking. But Machiavellianism is characterized by strategic, calculating manipulation. A Machiavellian individual, often called a Machian, is cynical, opportunistic, and they plan their deception.
They're strategists.
A long-term strategist. They'll engage in evasive hiding, active lying, and delaying because it serves a clear, long-term strategic goal, like ensuring they're the only person who can perform a critical task, which secures their position. They deliberately refuse help or hide information if it doesn't benefit them personally in some measurable way.
And psychopathy. That trait is often linked more to impulsivity and callousness, which sounds less calculating than the Machiavellian.
And that's the key distinction. Psychopathic individuals exhibit high levels of impulsivity, emotional coldness, and a real disrespect for social traditions. While the Machiavellian is strategic, the psychopath is more exploitatively and interpersonally problematic. They're also prone to evasive hiding and playing dumb, but their motivation might be more short-term or driven by a simple lack of concern for the other person.
They just don't care.
They don't care. Their overall disagreeableness and lack of attachment naturally lead them to aggressive, non-cooperative behavior, like playing dumb, just pretending they don't know something because they can't be bothered, Or maybe they actively enjoy the frustration of the other person.
And we noted earlier that, crucially, studies show these two traits are not significantly associated with rationalized hiding.
That's right, because rationalized hiding is seen as the less malevolent, less deceptive way to hide knowledge. It often involves an external excuse. Machiavellians and psychopaths, they prefer the more aggressive, overtly deceptive methods, evasive hiding and playing dumb. These tactics achieve their self-focused interests more directly and more ruthlessly. Rationalization is just too soft for their malevolent goals.
Okay, that leaves narcissism. Where does this trait fit into the knowledge-hiding typology, and why is it so distinct from the other two?
Narcissism was found to be primarily related to rationalized hiding, and this finding is perfectly consistent with their core psychological motivation. Narcissists want to be socially dominant, they view themselves as superior, and they need constant affirmation of their competence. They're ostentatious, and they constantly need to attract attention to their own prestige.
So instead of hiding maliciously to obstruct someone or gain power quietly, the narcissist hides to reinforce their own superior status. They're using the refusal to share as a tool to maintain the hierarchy.
That's the interpretation, exactly. A narcissist won't typically use evasive hiding because active deception risks being exposed, and that would be devastating to their self-image of perfection. So they hide knowledge by using rationalization, claiming the knowledge can't be shared because they are inherently superior to the requester, or the knowledge is too complex for the requester to handle, or that it's essential to their personal prestige and must be guarded.
So a practical example would be, I can't share this analysis with you not because I don't want to, but because it involves these complex proprietary techniques that, frankly, only I have been trained on, and I wouldn't want to confuse you.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
They hide the knowledge, but they reinforce their status in the process. It allows them to maintain their perceived dominance and superiority without engaging in the high-conflict, overtly deceptive methods that the Machiavellian just embraces. It's a status game, not a pure manipulation game.
So moving from the individual psyche to the environment, how does the workplace context enable these negative behaviors? I mean, it's not just about the person. The organization have to play a role.
Oh, a massive role. Research has clearly established that organizational context is a powerful mediator. A negative organizational communication climate partially mediates the link between the dark triad Machiavellianism and psychopathy and knowledge hiding, specifically evasive hiding and playing dumb.
So in an environment that's characterized by distrust or fear of retaliation or just intense internal competition,
in that kind of environment, employees with dark triad traits feel empowered and even justified in using these deceptive behaviors. A negative climate increases these behaviors significantly. It's like pouring gasoline on the fire of a Machiavellian personality.
And it seems like the organizational climate also works in tandem with specific interpersonal dynamics, particularly humor.
That is a highly detailed and fascinating finding from the research. The study showed that an aggressive humor style, combined with a negative organizational communication climate, sequentially mediates the relation between the dark triad and knowledge hiding.
Wait, hold on. How does an aggressive joke style specifically enable malicious knowledge hiding?
An aggressive humor style, sarcasm, ridicule, hostile jokes, it creates an interpersonal dynamic of tension and hostility. It signals that the environment is exploitative and low trust. And this hostile dynamic, it reinforces the cynical worldview of the Machiavellian and the psychopathic individual, making them more likely to engage in evasive hiding and playing dumb. It essentially lowers the psychological barriers against non-cooperation by normalizing aggressive interpersonal conduct.
So if managers want to curb these counterproductive behaviors, what are the actionable implications from these studies? How do we neutralize the effects of these dark architects?
The strategic implications point very strongly toward prevention and awareness. Managers really need to understand that specific personalities are indeed prone to knowledge hiding, especially when the organizational climate is poor. So the first suggestion is to design new techniques and personnel recruitment processes to detect high levels of narcissism, Machiavellianism, or psychopathy.
Early identification is key, because once these personalities are embedded in the culture, they can quickly poison the communication climate for everyone.
Exactly. And you complement that with training. Organizations must provide training and awareness programs to all employees to educate them about the dark triad personality traits and their potential impact on workplace dynamics. By increasing awareness, employees can better understand the manipulative behaviors associated with these traits, like aggressive humor or constant rationalization, and their consequences. That helps in mitigating the overall negative climate and encouraging healthier knowledge sharing.
You know, this entire deep dive has been about that gap between appearance and reality and the deliberate choices people make regarding information, whether they're gaining it, hiding it, or feigning ignorance of it.
That's the synthesis right there.
Yeah.
We explored the ultimate strategic toolkit, starting with that Machiavellian blend of the fox cunning, recognizing traps, deception, and the lion force, deterrence and reputation. The mandate is always situational adaptation.
Then we saw how this evolved into modern strategic management. Strategic ignorance is a deliberate filtering mechanism for success. The CEO ignoring short-term market noise to protect their focus, or the high-stakes negotiator avoiding knowledge to prevent signaling weakness. It's a proactive defense against accountability and cognitive overload.
And we broke down the tactical game of concealment in the workplace, analyzing the specific motives behind the 3 types of knowledge hiding, from the overtly malevolent deception of evasive hiding used by the Machiavellian to the status-driven rationalized hiding favored by the narcissist. The gray man is the ultimate act of self-preservation through deliberate invisibility blending in just to avoid becoming the target.
So the major takeaway for you, the learner, is this. The appearance of innocence or incompetence or simplicity, playing dumb, playing the fool, is often the sign of a highly sophisticated, intentional strategy. It's designed to manipulate perception, to lower the defenses of others by appealing to their vanity, and to maintain absolute control. Power is frequently less about what you display openly and far, far more about what you deliberately withhold or what you consciously choose not to see.
This deep dive really shows that achieving and maintaining power requires navigating a world where deception isn't the exception. It is pervasive and highly strategic. So consider this as you move forward and observe the players in your own life. We tend to judge others primarily by what we see, their appearance, their surface actions, the careful facade they wear, rather than what we know of their true concealed intentions. If appearances truly matter more than substance for influencing outcomes, how much of your own current success is built on a careful facade you never even realized you were wearing?
That is the unspoken rule of engagement. The final rule of mastery is that you can't learn unless you engage. If this deep dive helped you see the subtle traps set by the foxes and lions in your life, or maybe understand the psychological drivers of the dark architects, then prove your cunning right now.
Like this deep dive to signal your agreement with the strategy. Subscribe to join the inner circle of those who understand the real rules of the game. And ring that bell to ensure you never fall prey to the ultimate trap, forgetting what you've learned.
Now demonstrate your strategic ignorance. Tell us below. What is one piece of non-essential noise or stressful information you will choose to consciously filter out and ignore this week to focus only on your main goal? We'll see you next time.